Look at that face, that scar, that eye, that expression somewhere between a warning and a verdict. If you saw this lion in the wild, your first instinct would be fear, your second would be awe, and your third, if you were wise, would be silence. Because this is not just any lion. This is Scarface. And in the Masai Mara, his name was not given lightly. Every year, thousands of lions are born across the African savanna. Most live fast, most die young. In the brutal arithmetic of the wild, a male lion rules his territory for 2, maybe 3 years before younger, stronger rivals tear it away from him. The average reign of a male lion, 2 to 3 years. Scarface ruled for 12. This is not a story about a lion who was the biggest. He wasn't. Not a story about the fastest, not even the strongest. This is a story about a warrior who understood something most lions never learn. That power is not about muscle, it is about will. And it is a story about 4 brothers, the Four Musketeers of the Mara, who rewrote the rules of what a lion coalition could be. The African savanna at sunset holds a particular kind of silence, the kind that comes before something enormous. And then, from somewhere deep in the Musiara Marsh, a roar. Low, vibrating, ground-shaking. That was Scarface, announcing, as he always did, that the Mara belonged to him. In 2007, in the lush, dramatic landscape of Kenya's Masai Mara, 4 lion cubs were born into the Marsh Pride, a pride made globally famous by the BBC's Big Cat Diary. Their names would become legend: Sikio, Morani, Hunter. And the 4th, the one the world would remember, didn't yet have a name. He was just a lion, watching, learning, growing. They grew up together under the vast Kenyan sky. They learned to hunt together, failed together, starved together, and survived together. By 2011, they were no longer cubs. They were weapons. 4 young males, battle-hardened and hungry for territory. In lion society, a pair of males taking over a pride is common. A trio is powerful. But 4? 4 is an army. The Four Musketeers didn't hunt territory the way other lions did, with brute force and blind aggression. They moved like a military machine, coordinated, patient, tactical. While rivals relied on raw strength, the brothers relied on each other. They divided roles, they held flanks, they communicated in the ancient language of roars and posture that only they fully understood. And in 2012, they made their defining move. The takeover of the Musiara Marsh, the most prized territory in the Mara, came swiftly and without mercy. The incumbent males, older and unprepared for a 4-pronged assault, were ousted in a single brutal, coordinated strike. The Four Musketeers were in. The Mara had new kings. Now, about that face, there is a myth spread by tourists, whispered in safari camps, that Scarface got his wound from another lion, a glorious battle, 2 giants clashing at dawn. The truth is harder and somehow more powerful. In 2012, near the edges of the Mara, Scarface ventured close to Masai farmland. He was not the first lion to do so, and he would not be the last. The Masai, one of Africa's most respected warrior peoples, have protected their livestock for centuries. When a lion crosses that line, they respond. What struck Scarface's right eye, a spear, a machete, or the edge of a blade, history does not record with certainty. What it records is this: the wound should have killed him. Infection, loss of depth perception, inability to hunt effectively. For any other lion, it would have been the end. But Scarface did not lie down and wait to die. He healed, slowly, alone, in moments that no camera captured. He adapted his hunt, his approach, his entire way of moving through the world. Wildlife vets monitored him from a distance. They watched, They worried. He did not need their intervention. When he returned to his coalition, one eye permanently damaged, a deep gash across his face, his brothers did not flinch. They did not reject him. Because in the world of the Mara, it was not the wound that defined you. It was what you did after. And from that moment, he had a name. Scarface. It was meant to describe a wound. Instead, it described a king. At their peak, the Four Musketeers controlled territory that most lion coalitions only dream of. They held the prime river crossings during the Great Migration, when millions of wildebeest pour across the Mara River and the hunting is extraordinary. They controlled multiple prides. They patrolled borders that stretched across vast swaths of the Kenyan Savanna. This was not luck. This was dominance enforced daily. Rival coalitions tested them constantly. The most dangerous were the Six Warriors, a group of younger males who outnumbered the brothers and pushed hard at the margins of their territory. Border wars erupted at dusk and dawn, in the gray light when lions fight and cameras struggle. The Six Warriors came and came again, and each time the Four Musketeers held, because Scarface stood at the front. Even with one eye, even as the years stacked against him, even as younger lions with perfect vision and full strength looked at him and calculated their odds, he stood there, and they retreated. What made Scarface extraordinary as a leader was not just his courage, it was his presence. There is a quality that some leaders have, human or animal, that cannot be trained or inherited. It can only be earned through pain, through loss, through surviving what should have broken you. Scarface had that quality, and his brothers, Sikio, Morani, Hunter, never betrayed him. In a world where male lions routinely abandon weakened coalition partners, they held together. Four brothers who arrived together and refused to fall apart. In the lion world, that is almost unheard of.
At some point, no one can say exactly when, Scarface stopped being just a lion. He became a destination. Tourists who flew to Kenya did not simply ask to see lions, they asked to see Scarface. Safari guides received requests months in advance. Wildlife photographers from Europe, America, and Asia planned entire expeditions around the possibility of spending an hour in his presence. One tour operator called him the Mona Lisa of the Mara. It is a comparison that sounds absurd until you see him sitting in the golden light of the Kenyan afternoon, and you understand completely. Photographers loved him for a specific reason. Most lions, approached by safari vehicles, eventually move away. They are wild animals, and the instinct is to create distance. Scarface did not move away. He had seen enough vehicles in his lifetime that he simply regarded them with that one working eye as part of the landscape, and then he would lower his great scarred head or turn his gaze to the horizon, and you had your photograph. He was regal in a way that only something truly old and truly powerful can be. But beyond the tourism economy, beyond the photographs, Scarface did something more important. He put a face, literally, on the crisis threatening lions across Africa. Habitat loss, retaliatory killings, human-wildlife conflict, the same conflict that scarred his eye. These are the forces that have reduced Africa's lion population by more than 40% in just 2 decades. Scarface, with his ruined eye and his impossible resilience, made people care, made them look, made them ask questions. A conservation symbol is most powerful when it is also a story, and Scarface was the best story the Mara had ever produced. By 2020, time had finally begun to collect its debt. Scarface was 14 years old, ancient by lion standards. His ribs showed beneath loose, graying fur. His walk, once a slow and deliberate assertion of ownership, had become something else, something more careful. His brothers were gone. Sikio, Morani, Hunter, each had disappeared in their own way, as lions do. Quietly, without ceremony, into the vast, indifferent grass. Scarface walked alone now. And here is where the story becomes something unexpected. Younger males patrolled the territory that was once his. They were in their prime, 3, 4 years old, exactly the age when lions consolidate power by eliminating the old king. They did not touch him. Wildlife researchers who watched this period carefully could offer no clean scientific explanation. What they observed was this: the young males of the Mara, again and again, chose to walk around Scarface rather than confront him. It was as if the Mara itself had decided, this one has earned the right to go in his own time. In his final months, he walked his old routes, the river crossings, the marsh, the acacia groves he had patrolled 1,000 times. Alone, yes, but unbowed. And then, in the final days of his life, the trackers and guides who had watched him for years noticed something remarkable. He was walking south, toward the place where it had all begun. A journey of 25 kilometers in a body that was failing him. He walked anyway, as if he knew exactly where he wanted to be when the end came. June 11th, 2021, 1 in the afternoon. No roar, no battle, no blood on the grass. Just a lion, lying down in the land he had ruled for 12 years, closing his eyes for the last time in the soft Kenyan heat. Natural causes, that is what they recorded. Natural causes, as if there were anything natural about a life like his. The BBC reported it, CNN reported it, news traveled across the world in hours, the death of a lion who had become somehow a figure that people who had never set foot in Kenya felt they knew personally. The Masai people, who had lived alongside lions for centuries, who understood better than anyone what it cost to share a landscape with them, paid their respects. In their tradition, great warriors are honored even in death, especially in death. And the wildlife photographers, the guides, the researchers who had spent years watching him, they sat with the grief of it, the particular grief of losing something wild and irreplaceable. We tell ourselves that animals do not understand legacy, that they live and die without the weight of what they leave behind. But Scarface walked 25 kilometers on failing legs to return to where he came from. Tell me that means nothing. He was not the biggest lion in the Mara. He was not the most perfect. He had one working eye and a scar that ran deep and a body that carried 12 years of battle. But he stood at the front when it mattered. He never abandoned his brothers. He healed when he should have died. He ruled when he should have fallen. And in the end, he walked home. There is a kind of strength that the world does not celebrate enough. Not the strength of the young and unbroken. Not the strength of perfect bodies and sharp eyes. The strength of the scarred. The strength of those who had been wounded, truly wounded, and chose, quietly and without applause, to keep going. Scarface showed us that a leader is not defined by their wounds. They are defined by how they carry them. The king is gone. But somewhere in the Masai Mara tonight, a young lion is learning to roar, finding his voice, testing his strength against a world that will not be gentle with him. And somewhere in that lion's blood, in the long, unbroken chain of predator and prey and survival, there is something that was Scarface's. The land remembers. If this story moved you, if Scarface made you feel something, then he has done, in death, what he did in life. He made you look. The king has fallen, but his bloodline remains. Subscribe to witness more legends of the wild.